All right, AP, let's go ahead and dive right back into rhetorical analysis. Our goal today is going to be doing a recap of the analysis process and a refresher on how to approach the essay. So let's go ahead and start right here. What is rhetorical analysis? Rhetorical analysis is the examination of written text to determine how the author has shaped the content in order to achieve an identifiable purpose for a given audience. So easier said than done, right? If we go back to Jalaffi's framework, we know that understanding how an author achieves their purpose is very complex. An author has an exigence, meaning that they are motivated or have some kind of motivation to send their message. They must appeal to their audience in a very strategic way. They need to get the audience to trust them. They need to appeal to their emotions. They need to present the most logical and factual information in order to win them over. But furthermore, they need to think about how to strategically organize their message, how to use diction and syntax in a way that will appeal to the audience, maybe working in some schemes and tropes to make them think or feel differently. Those are the 5 canons of rhetoric. An author will use style choices, arrangement choices, appeals. They'll pick a genre in which to present their argument, all in hopes to achieve the rhetorical situation. Now, in a 45-minute time period, this is going to be difficult to do all at once. My hope is to break it down for you in more manageable terms so you can approach the essay with confidence. Let's go ahead and look at the what, how, why model. I introduced this to you back in the first semester, and what it makes you think about is, first and foremost, what is the author saying? Let's just think about this on the surface and make sure that we comprehend the text. But furthermore, we have to ask ourselves, how is he using rhetoric to say it? Because that's what the task at hand is asking you to do. If you want to get a high score, though, you're going to have to ask yourself why he or she is saying it. What is motivating them? What's going on outside of the text that is enhancing their choices? So let's talk about how to annotate when it comes to the what, how, why model. If you're just reading the text at first glance, you're thinking about what is being said, trying to get that holistic message in so you understand top to bottom what's being achieved. Soapstone is a good model for this. Understanding what the text is about, that's the subject, maybe having some hints at the context and the occasion that's surrounding it, like what time period is it given in, what was going on in the world. Also, make sure you can identify who the speaker is and who they are speaking to. And then finally, identify the attitude the author has on the subject. So here would be a very basic example. If you've watched any of President Trump's addresses to the nation and you soapstoned it, it would look something like this. All right, he's talking about COVID-19 and the pandemic. That's the subject. He's talking about this because he's asking us to isolate, quarantine, and practice social distancing. We know that that's important because the whole goal is to flatten the curve. Maybe he mentions that here and there, maybe he doesn't, but we understand that's a part of the context that's motivating his speech. We know he is our president and he has a duty to guide us in these times, and we know he's speaking to an American audience specifically. At times, maybe he's addressing the state of New York, who's going through it more drastically than we are, or even California. But regardless, he's speaking to Americans. His tone on the subject is serious. It's important that we heed his advice in this time. So that's the what right there. When you're given an AP prompt, remember that they'll clue you into the context. They'll give you maybe 1 or 2 sentences that will give you the date and the year, maybe tell you a little bit about who the speaker is and like why this text was published, etc., etc. Don't forget to pick up on those clues. But once you understand or just comprehend what the text is about, you have to think about the authorial choices, the how. This is where you want to go back to those 5 canons of rhetoric, specifically paying attention to the first 3. How is strategic choices the author makes, such as schemes and tropes, diction, syntax, the organizational method, why they present some information before other information, and then how those choices are below the surface appealing to the audience in specific ways. But don't forget to ask yourself why in the end. Your ultimate goal is to state the purpose of the text and explain how the writer achieved it. But remember, there is an explicit purpose and an implicit purpose. As long as you do the what correctly, you can identify that explicit purpose. President Trump gives this speech to encourage Americans to isolate and quarantine. Okay, that's probably obvious. That's something he may have said explicitly. That could get you a 4. I don't know that that's going to guarantee you college credit, though, on your final score. The real challenge is to uncover the author's exigence. Why do they care so deeply about this issue? What's compelling them to send this message? That could bring in more nuance and sophistication to your analysis. So think about this. President Trump is motivated because COVID-19 is affecting the American way of life. It's going to hit our economy drastically, and we need to get through this as quickly as possible. These are all of his reasons as to why he wants Americans to heed his advice. So maybe a more nuanced purpose could be, not only does President Trump want to encourage Americans to quarantine, but he also wants to make them understand that we need to do this quickly and swiftly in order to save our economy and our way of life. All of this is going to help you reach for that sophistication point so you can show that you read this text on not just a surface level, but a deeper level as well. All right, let's talk about the essay. Hopefully you dig deep when you're in your pre-writing stage. You annotate, you analyze, you feel like you understand this text on many levels. How do you prove that to the AP reader? Well, let's talk about the introduction first. Without a doubt, you have to identify and state what the purpose is. It tells you to do that in the prompt. So make sure that you do this in the introduction. And we know that's probably best done when it's the last line of your introductory paragraph. What you can do is start with a quick contextual hook. Show the AP reader that you understand the rhetorical situation early. Go ahead and then give the title and the author of the work. Summarize the piece, state any devices that the author uses, and then nail the purpose. So you could start off with something like this. In the year 2020, a pandemic hit the world. COVID-19 seemingly came out of nowhere, but once it hit America, we had a choice of what to do with it. In these times, President Trump took to the camera and spoke to the American people in order to convince them to isolate and quarantine as a means to slow down this pandemic. In his speech, he uses personal pronouns, patriotic language, and short and abrupt sentence structure in order to, boom, state your purpose. You've got it. Then you have to think about how you're going to organize your body paragraphs. You want to write 3 strong body paragraphs in which each one analyzes a specific rhetorical choice. So think about picking 3 rhetorical choices. Again, it could be diction, it could be a scheme and trope, it could be an organizational method. It's totally up to you what you want those 3 to be. But pick the 3 strongest ones. So think about devices that are used a lot. Like maybe anaphora is all over the piece. Maybe there's an extended metaphor that just completely drives the narrative. That would be a great device to pick. You could also think about picking devices that push appeals, like a device that could establish a trusting relationship with the speaker, a device that maybe promotes logos and the most important information, or a device that establishes a emotional connection with the audience and pushes pathos. I would also say, though, as one of my biggest pieces of advice, is that when you organize your 3-body paragraphs, I think the best way to do it is in chronological order. Sorry, that's my dog. Frankie. All right. So chronological order, I got off track there a little bit. What you want to think about is what the author does first, second, and in the finale. That's a great way to show a momentum build and how purpose is achieved by the very end. In each body paragraph, don't forget that you're back in claim data warrant format. The claim is the rhetorical choice that you are using. I'd pick 2 quotes that highlight where that device is used, and then the warrant is where you explain the how and the why. The how the device actually impacts the reader is very important, but if you can sneak in the context, the rhetorical situation, hint at the why in the warrant as well, that's where you're going to get the sophistication point and really impress the AP reader. If you don't do that, if you give me a 1 to 2 sentence warrant and you stay only in the how, you might stay at that adequate range. You know the conclusion's the easiest part. Give me 1 to 2 sentences and get out. You're just quickly summarizing what you say and you're ending the thing. Overall, my other pieces of advice are this. This is not an argument. This is not a critique. AP doesn't care if you think the argument is good or not. You just want to stick to analysis. So with that being said, stay in the third person. Do not wander off onto personal experiences. Do not use I or the personal pronoun. Your only exception really would be maybe the universal we. Strong rhetorical verbs impress the AP reader, and don't waste any time defining rhetorical terms. AP English teachers and professors grade this essay so they know what the terms are. As a last note, I just want to let you know that you guys did a phenomenal job on the rhetorical analysis assignment from before spring break. First of all, there's a lot of documentaries I really want to watch now, and I thought that you talked about the rhetoric in each of your texts in a very sophisticated manner. The introductions were so strong. It showed that you had a very deep understanding of the rhetorical situation. And the fact that you highlight that in the introduction impresses us early. And that's such a great choice to do for your essay. I thought the purpose statements were solid. Some were better than others. I know all were in that adequate or at least accurate range, but the verbiage was good. You guys avoided shows and you chose stronger verbs to tell me what the author is doing. Something we need to improve upon, that the claims were okay. We need to work on identifying more specific rhetorical techniques. Some of that was vague. And you barely discussed tone. I think maybe you only saw like 3 students do this. Tone is such an important part of rhetoric, and it can be something you talk about within your warrants. So we'll discuss that in the coming weeks. Don't forget to tie your warrants back to the why as an overall message. That is your goal, to present the most sophisticated and nuanced essay. All right. I know I kind of ran through that quickly. I have like 2 more minutes on my timer before it cuts me off. But keep in mind, I made a resource folder in Schoology. So I'm going to put more lecture notes in there. I'm going to put resources that maybe you can use on the AP exam. I'll find that worksheet that had verbs instead of shows on it to help you with writing. I want you guys to know that next week we are going to do a practice time writing. We're going to jump right in and do one, and you're going to get feedback early. We're going to brush off the dust, get rid of the rust because it's been a minute, and then I'm going to give you specific feedback so it can drive our instruction over the next couple of weeks of how we can get better at the essay. All right, guys, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you on Monday, or at least talk to you on Monday, but that is my lecture for today.